After far too long of a delay, the Gurus are back in session. Xavier Aguiar, Mike Testa. And this is going to be a fun episode because yesterday the Dolphins fell to 0-3 on the season. And because this was a late episode this week, we were doing an 0-2 panic meter. And don't worry, we are still going to do that. But hey, we have an 0-3 team now to discuss. So, Mike, the resident Dolphins fan, Mr. Dolphins Country on all platforms, he already talked about the game yesterday on his own channel, but after some time to kind of digest the loss and see the landscape of how everything's shaking up, we wanted to start this podcast with a State of the Union address from Mike Testa to the Miami Dolphins. So, Mike, tough game yesterday.
Very.
It was fun, but again, not the result you were hoping for, although you were expecting it.
Yeah.
But just go off the top here. What did you see, and what is the future looking like for Miami as opposed to what you said last week? Because last week you were pretty pessimistic, but I imagine those feelings are even worse now.
I'm still pessimistic, but what I saw last night was a competitive football game. I mean, if you had told me with 3 minutes to go, the Dolphins were down by 7 and driving at the 25-yard line, and Tua throws a pick, I would have been like, I'm okay with that. That far exceeded my expectations of last night's game heading into it. And they do tend to do this sometimes. The Dolphins, weirdly enough, when their backs are really, really up against the wall, like they were last night, when you're 0-2 and you lose to, as I mentioned before, Daniel Jones and Drake May, one of those games being at home, and the firing McDaniel, thing are flying around the stadium, fire Greer, that you have one of two options. You can quit and get blown out on prime time where everything's magnified and everyone gets fired, or you can come out and fight. And they did the latter. They came out and fought. Ultimately, though, you're facing Josh Allen on the other side, so we knew how it would end. Ultimately, that's why I'm not even really pissed about the ending. Everyone's targeting Tua. I totally get it. He's a big target with Dolphins media right now. They blame him for essentially every loss because again, this fan base is they're hungry for. They want to blame anyone at this point, and that's fine. Tua throws the pick. We lose the game. Even if he goes down and scores there, I don't think it really mattered. Ultimately, Josh Allen's on the other side, and it's a tie game with 2 minutes to go, and he gets the ball last. So I'm not mad about the result. A 10-point loss is much better than I thought. Ultimately, the state of the team right now is that they're not very good. That's what a lot of Dolphins fans don't really want to address. The core issue is they're not a good football team. The roster is very flawed, and yet they want to point a finger as to what is the singular problem with the team. There is no singular problem with the team. There isn't hey, bench Tua and the team gets better. That is absolutely not where we're not one of those teams where it's hey, make one fix, fire a coordinator, and you're back to no. This is not a one singular fixed football team. This roster is flawed. It's built very flawed. Chris Greer, in what is a make or break year for him, decided, hey, here's an idea. Let's go into the season with no proven corners. And you see through 3 weeks how that's gone. The run defense hasn't even been good. And, you can blame whoever you want for that, but they had Calais Campbell last year. They had Deshaun Hand last year. Those guys were good next to Zach Sealer. They were actually a good run defense last year. This year, they let both those guys walk. Deshaun Hand is now on the Chargers. Calais Campbell back in Arizona. And they have two rookie defensive tackles in Kenneth Grant and Jordan Phillips playing next to Zach Sealer. And the run defense is Swiss cheese this year. So ultimately, it's a defense that doesn't have the personnel to even match up with these guys like Buffalo and Kansas City, Baltimore, the likes of the competitive teams in a make or break year. So the state of the team is just they're not that good. And we're going to point the blame to the quarterback, which is, what every team does when they're losing. So I get it. But ultimately, if you told me yesterday, if we recorded this yesterday heading into the game and you said, hey, Mike, they're going to be down 28-21 with 3 minutes to go at Buffalo's 25-yard line with a chance to tie the game, I've been like, wow, that's pretty good. I'll take it.
Now, here's the problem, Mike, because in 2025, in this kind of basic media landscape that we live in, this reactionary culture, every time a team is in similar despair as this, the quarterback is blamed, as you mentioned. And it's easy to blame Tua. He's 2-9 in his last 11 games against above 500 teams. Visually, at points, it looks so gimmicky. I know someone sent in our group chat the spray chart of his throws yesterday, and it's genuinely hilarious because it's just the sidelines. And visually, it's so apparent that he is not a floor raiser at this point in his career. He is a game manager. He is playing in the confines of the system, and the system is flawed. But even with that being said, last week, they had a chance to win against New England. A-Chain steps out by half a foot regardless. Tua still had an opportunity to lead a drive, and he couldn't. Yesterday, regardless of what Josh Allen might have done afterwards, he had a chance to tie the game, and he couldn't. So I think it's these things, especially in compounding weeks, paired with kind of the history of Tua at this point, the last few seasons, the constant injuries, the inability to rise to the occasion and put this team over the top, make this team a viable playoff threat. It's those things plus this coach who is totally a dork and is inept at points on the sideline. He's a terrible post-game guy. And obviously, this team's going to be a pariah for the media. So my question to you is, look, it's easy to say that this is an organizational catastrophe because it is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But the only way to fix that, especially in the modern NFL, it feels like to me, is to replace the head coach and the quarterback because those guys are married at the hip at this point. And this is furthermore my point, quarterbacks just don't get years to develop anymore. It's just not like that. If you're not an above average guy by year 5, that's a problem. And Tua's had plenty of opportunities at this point to prove that he is an upper echelon quarterback. They paid him like he is an upper echelon quarterback. And he's yet to really rise to that occasion. So what do you say to that point?
I say it's a fair point, although if we want to go down that rabbit hole, I can point to a bunch of other guys that are making Tua money that have the exact same. So we can do this with a bunch of different teams as well. Yeah. But yes, just take on Miami. I agree that they're married at the hip. The head coach and the quarterback, if you want to get rid of one, it's almost like simultaneously you got to get rid of both of them. That being said, Tua, you can't really get out of this contract until next year. They have an out after next year. And assuming, let's just play the hypothetical game. This is a lost year. Let's just say they're not very good this year. They try one more year with Tua, and it doesn't go anywhere. Then you can get out of that deal. And that would, ironically enough, be the 7th year of Tua on the heels of a 7-year plan with Tannehill, who they gave from 2012 to 2018. They gave him a pretty long leash. In 7 years, no playoff wins. He goes to Tennessee and wins a playoff game the very next year, ironically enough. This would be a 7-year Tua plan, 2020 to 2026 if he gets next year. We don't know, but it's hard to get out of that contract, which is kind of my point. I do think that he isn't going anywhere. Like people are just like, oh, bench Tua, cut him, take the cap hit or whatever it is. I don't foresee that happening. I also don't think I don't think it should happen. I don't think he's the issue with the team. I think that maybe he's not a floor raiser anymore, but I watched him literally last year in this exact same scenario go down there and score a touchdown and tie the game against Buffalo. He didn't do it last night, but I've literally seen him do it in the exact same stadium a year prior. The point is we just can't beat this team. With or without Tua, we can't beat the team. I mean, it's a Bills, and people are like, well, why can't we beat Buffalo? By and large, it's the same guys every year. For the Buffalo Bills, they have the same continuity guys every year building year in and year out, and they consistently beat us the exact same way by and large. The Dolphins, actually got rid of their homegrown talent, but these guys just aren't on the level of Buffalo roster-wise. And sure, Tua's obviously not on the level of Josh Allen. That being said, I mean, it's not like we can't beat the Bills because Tua can't beat the Bills. I think it's I would take Philadelphia's roster. I don't think Jalen Hurts is even close to Josh Allen's level, but they can beat the Bills. Philadelphia can absolutely line up there and beat the Bills, and they don't have the quarterback to do so. It's the fact that they have the roster built to do it. We don't have the roster to compete with Buffalo in this division. At this point, we don't have the roster to compete with New England in this division. So it's a bigger issue than the quarterback. I understand that that's the media what we want to harp on, but the roster isn't built to compete. And until it is, there's no point even talking about the quarterback. Like we can get a guy. I mean, we can make the point of Baker Mayfield making $30 million a year. Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. You can get a guy who was passed by other teams. If you build a roster around him, it is evident that you can win a playoff game. We've seen it around the league. The Dolphins just haven't built a roster worthy of doing that.
But don't you think it'd be better if they just had a clean break at the end of this year? Because as you mentioned, they can't realistically get out of Tua until next year, but there's ways around it. They could use him as a bridge guy. They could bench him midway through next year or the beginning of next year, actually, and draft a guy, bring a guy into the building, whatever it may be. And maybe he's still around, but he's not, the face of the franchise like he is now. So at that point, I think for me, it's not just the media at this point. It's also the locker room. Clearly, he's losing the locker room week in, week out. So is McDaniel. So I think those two guys are kind of the figurehead of this era of the Dolphins. And I think in the building, they know that as well. So if they want internal change, the only way to do that, I think, in my opinion, is to get rid of those figureheads, to kind of get rid of the identity of what this team's been. Because this team's been built on finesse and speed and kind of being smarter than everyone else. But Mike, my problem is every time they need to be smarter than everyone else, they do something incredibly stupid.
Yes.
Last night it was running into the punter. Last year against Buffalo it was running into the punter. They do all these idiotic things at key points in games. And look, the shredding the middle of the field and these crossers, that's all well and good. But clearly that doesn't really work throughout an entire game against a really good team. Because I mentioned the stat earlier. He's 2-9 in his last 11 against above 500 teams.
And he's 1-9 against Buffalo. So
exactly. Right. So at what point, yes, he's not the integral issue with why this team is nosediving. But at what point are we like, okay, this guy, even if we were to improve this roster around him, he just doesn't have it right now.
That's fine. I don't even necessarily disagree with you. I'm just saying I've literally seen this exact same story before. It's called Ryan Tannehill 7 years ago. I'm just saying if you dump Tua next year, which I'm not even saying I would be against doing it. I'm just saying if he goes to another team with actual structure and actual coaching and an actual roster that's built to compete in January, I wouldn't be shocked if he won a playoff game. I've seen quarterbacks who are worse than Tua win a playoff game. So the Dolphins fans are clamoring for playoff wins and they're blaming, Tua just can't get it done. Maybe he can't with this team, even though the offense is catered to him. I just think the roster as a whole isn't built for January success. And I've said that for now 2.5 years. I don't think that they can beat up on bad teams. That's totally fine. But this roster is flawed. I don't think this coach, I think he'll be a very good coordinator, Mike McDaniel. I don't think he's long as head coach. I think he's a very flashy, nice nerd. I say that with all respect. Rex Ryan made fun of him. I think he is a nerd, but he knows what he's doing as far as offensive play. He can scheme guys open. I don't doubt that. He's a brutal press conference guy after the game. You're right about that. I don't think that this marriage is good enough to win a playoff game. That being said, I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if Tua went somewhere next year and, played well and people were like, oh, maybe it was the Dolphins. Well, you think? They don't know how to build a roster. It's obviously always the Dolphins. It could be a little bit of both, but I'm not going to dump on the quarterback saying, oh, let's just draft a quarterback next year in a quarterback class where who do we like in that class again? Isn't like Arch having problems like throwing normal quick outs against UTEP? Who's good in this class?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's early in the college football calendar.
Very early.
But right now, there's not this guy. It's like fantasy, Mike. When you play in a dynasty league, these guys tank for a high pick, and then you ask them, like, who are you tanking for exactly? Like, what exactly are you doing?
Right.
So it's just one of those things like, okay, if Miami cuts bait with Tua, like, who are they going after?
You have to have an alternative because that's what people were saying before. Just the last point on Tua. When people said, wait, just don't pay him. Don't pay him. I was like, okay, you can have that stance, but you have to give me an alternative because in the league, if you don't pay your quarterback, you have no quarterback. So you have to figure out if you're not going to pay Tua after that 2023 season he had, and half the fan base was split. They was like, well, I don't want to pay him. Then you have to come up with an alternative option. I mean, we know those that year there was the Darnolds were out there. They had a few other guys. Like if you wanted to go after like Russ or whatever, you have to give me an alternative option if you don't want to pay Tua. And no one really gave me an alternative option. And no one was drafting a quarterback that year. We weren't good enough. We were 11-6 that year. So there was no drafting a quarterback in that class unless you wanted to trade up for like Penix. And then you get Tua light or Tua with a bigger arm or whatever. But there was no alternative. At the end of the day, I'm Dolphins out. I don't have to watch the team for another 11 days. So I'm just sick of watching them. Honestly, I'm sick of talking about them. I'm sick of watching them. They're 0-3. They're in a league of their own at this point.
They'll probably avoid our next podcast, but in a few weeks, we'll definitely check in and see where Miami is at. It's one of the things I look forward to every week. As long as they keep losing, it's really fun to listen to you go off on them.
Of course.
But we're going to go off on some teams together here because there are now 9 specifically 0-2 teams in the NFL. And we're going to do a panic meter from 1 to 10 on whether or not, things are fine. Obviously, no one wants to be 0-2, but is the path to a turnaround evident, or are things a little bit murky? And I think, especially this year, more so than the last few years, I think the baseline number for this is going to be like 4 or 5. I think a lot of these teams are in serious trouble. Even the bigger brands. And we'll kick it off with the perennial dumpster fire of our lifetime, the New York Jets. They're already on a backup quarterback. Tyrod Taylor, welcome back, man. He is starting for his 6th team. He's been with New York for 3 years now, but it is his first start in green. And he's facing Tampa this weekend in a game that I think everyone in survivor pools are picking Tampa in because, my God.
Watch out, though. Tampa's got a lot of injuries. It's a short week. They got a lot of injuries, and it's Tyrod Taylor with, we say we want about Justin Fields, but there's still some issues there with him. Tyrod is a decent. He's not going to lose you a football game by and large. And by the way, another interesting storyline here: Tyrod against his former successor, if you will, in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield. So that game, remember Baker's debut? He came in for Tyrod Taylor with the injured Tyrod Taylor.
Mike, it's Tyrod, right? Isn't that what Baker just told us?
Tyrod. I apologize. Yeah. It is actually Tyrod. He doesn't correct anybody. But it actually is Tyrod. So he came in for the injured Tyrod against, guess who he faced that week in Baker's debut? Todd Bowles and the Jets. So nice little what do you call it? Like the
little callback.
Yeah, a little callback to that Thursday night game and debut that Baker had. But yeah, I do agree. This is gonna be a heavy Survivor League because the Jets are in trouble. Uh-oh, I can't hear him. Uh-oh, what's going on here? Why did I lose him? Uh-oh, did I click something? What is going on here? No, it's mouthing. Is he back?
Can you hear me now?
No. Oh, yeah, there you go.
You can? All right, I'm going to do something kind of weird, but just go with it, okay?
Okay, yep.
Okay. Oh, hold on. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to explain that in a sec. So basically, we're going to start this entire segment over. I'm going to clap. That way I know when to cut it. That's an old media thing they teach you in school.
Yeah.
Just so I know exactly when to cut it. That way I don't have to comb through words
and
stuff. So I'll do a little clap. We'll just start the whole panic meter thing again.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say we're transitioning to the panic meter. We'll do the Jets. Okay.
Boom.
Here we go. And now we're going to transition to the panic meter. There are now 9 teams exactly 0-2. We're going to start with the perennial dumpster fire of our lifetime, the New York Football Jets. And this team is a total disaster. They are on a backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. Thank you, Baker.
Yes.
And again, as we mentioned, they are facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it looks like from now on the Jets are going to be one of those teams that every week in a survivor pool, you're going to pick the opposite team of them. Of course, they had the fun week 1 against Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. But last week, Fields goes down with a concussion. And all the problems with this team come to the surface. Tampa, again, dealing with injuries. But
a lot of injuries. Short week. So it's frisky, but I maybe you throw it into survivor pool. But it's a little bit weird. I would just say that.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit weird, but I think right now the Jets are one of those teams that if your team is playing them, you're feeling really great, and that's even with Fields in the lineup. So, Mike, where are you at with the Jets right now? Because this is a weird team. Because I think if they won Week 1, there would still be a lot more optimism because they would have beat their former ex-girlfriend, if you will, and Aaron Rodgers in a shootout fashion. Which again, the Jets are not accustomed to playing those kind of games. So not only would they have won that, but the loss against Buffalo would have been way less soured because their guy who would have theoretically led them to that win got hurt. So it would have been 1-1. They could have chalked it up to injury, and they would have went about their merry way. But not only did they lose that Week 1 game against a Steelers team that cannot tackle, cannot get set up on defense, and the offense was immediately exposed the next week. Now you're going to a beefy part of the schedule against Tampa. Even a team like New England and Miami for them in their own division, they're not expected to beat at this juncture. It just feels like the sky is falling in New York all over again. And even in the early days of this Aaron Glenn era, it's still unclear when in the world they're going to be able to turn this thing around.
This is this a 1 to 10 panic meter?
Yeah.
If so, it's like a 9 and we're pushing 10. And here's the problem. I think, we all say that Week 1's the biggest liar week. It appears that way because remember last week looked like the Jets that we thought. Remember, they get smoked by Buffalo. I think Fields had 3 completions midway through the third quarter. It was really bad. I mean, it was like an offense that could not move the football. It looked night and day to the one that we saw Week 1. I think Week 2 is what I think they're closer to the Week 2 Jets than the Week 1 Jets. Either way, they lose both games, and now their quarterback's out with a concussion. So you can't get much more panicked than the Jets right now, who are on Tyrod Taylor already in Week 3. This is going to be a rough year 1 for Aaron Glenn. There's nothing really. The Jets are becoming the Giants that we talked about last week. They're not going to even find a spot on our television screen. The Jets, I'm struggling to even find an area for them. I just don't want to watch the Jets right now. It's an offense that just doesn't move me. Their receiving room is just pedestrian at best. Tyrod, I've seen enough of Tyrod over the years. Obviously, journeyman quarterback. A lot of respect for him, but what are we doing here? So the Jets 0-2. It feels like 0-4 when you lose your quarterback. Because the only saving grace for Jets fans this year, I think Jets fans knew they'd be pretty bad, but they wanted to see if Fields could revive his career to a degree. And to already be concussed in week 2 is not a good start. It's not an ideal start. So they're a panic for me. They're about a 9.
Yeah, for me it's a 10 for that exact reason, because I think the only kind of saving grace of the season was how good is Justin Fields. And if you don't even have a glimmer of hope of figuring that out early in the season, then what are you playing for at this point? And it's not like they have another young option to turn to. I mean, Tyrod Taylor can stable the ship, I guess, but what does that even do? And I think at this point, I'm of the notion, like, look, you either have to pick a lane. You either have to tank or you have to win games. And I think these teams in the middle too often default towards tanking because, in theory, there's nothing to win for, right? But as far as, like, teams with a young quarterback, I think winning is important because, yes, you want to, supplant them with good talent around them. But at the same time, you want to teach them how to win games. Whereas the Jets right now, you don't really want to teach Tyrod Taylor how to win games. He knows how to do that.
No.
He's 37, I believe, or at least pushing it. So at this point, it's like one of those things where this season feels over, and it's the third week of the season. And it's another lost season for New York. And again, are they going to do the draft a quarterback gimmick again? They do that all the time. Are they going to try to find someone in free agency again? They really just don't have a path. And until they put something together, some kind of action plan to fix this franchise, I think it's just a permanent 10. It's almost cheating, but I think that's where they're at right now. And
yeah. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is, like, it feels like right now the Jets have the belt for the worst franchise in sports. It really does. And it felt like for maybe a year or two, they were at least trying to be competitive. And maybe they're passing that off to a team.
Carolina was trying to take it for
the Pittsburgh Pirates or something, where they're not really committed to winning, right?
No.
And even if they should be, they weren't committed to winning. So at least the Jets were trying something. But now they're back to kind of playing the middle of the dumpster fire pool, where they just don't really have any sort of direction of any kind. And to me, that is far worse than being committed one way or the other.
Yeah, no, you got to pick a direction. At this point, what is the Jets' direction? They've done this, draft a quarterback every election year type of thing before. So maybe they go down that route again. They could bring in a bridge quarterback. It just seems like the team overall isn't very good. What are they tanking for exactly? Does anyone really know? I've already seen Lenora Sellers mocked to the Jets. To kind of they'd be fun, I guess. But it's a similar thing. It's just like we've gone down this rabbit hole enough with the Jets to where the panic mode has to be a 10. I mean, I'm giving it a 9 just because I want to be, like, fair. It is September. I don't want to say anyone should be freaking out, but they're as close to a 10 as you're going to get, in my opinion.
I'll see what we think of this next team, the Cleveland Browns, because I think they're in a similar vein as far as they've had so much incompetence over the last 2 decades. They had the brief Baker spurt where it looked like everything was going the right direction, and that fizzled out rather fast. And now the Browns are in a weird place because I think the roster is actually okay in some areas. I think they have some guys, more guys than the Jets per se.
Yeah.
But again, the quarterback position is a big question mark. They're starting another long
37-year-old
veteran quarterback
38,
in Joe Flacco. He is, at this point, he should be on CBS calling a game rather than starting one.
He should be next to Matt Ryan in that 4-person analyst booth.
Yeah, I think it'd be better too. But regardless, Cleveland is in this place where, are they a quarterback away from being fun? Do they need a little bit more than that? For me, I'm going to go right off the top. For me, Cleveland's panic meters are 2 for this reason. They're doing exactly what they want to do. They don't want to be winning games.
Right.
They have no desire to do that, and I think they're on track to eventually play Dylan Gabriel, and then eventually probably play Shedeur Sanders. So they're following their mission statement to a T. Because that's my problem with the Jets. The Jets don't know what they're doing. At least the Browns have a plan. Regardless of whether it's going to work or not, we will see. But I can appreciate at least following steps and making an attempt to turn this thing around. So that's why I think the panic meters are 2, because A successful season for Cleveland would be going 0-17. They're 0-2. They look like they'll be frisky in some of these games. They'll probably win
They're a little too
4
frisky
games.
right now. They're a little too frisky.
Yeah, a smidge too frisky, but I think that'll come when they make a quarterback change, right? Or Flacco gets hurt or whatnot. So that's why I think the panic meters are 2. You could make it a little higher if you think they're a little bit too frisky and the mission statement's going to go south in these next few weeks. But right now, I think they're doing what they want to be doing.
I went with a 6. I think you're giving them a little bit too much credit for anytime someone says the Browns know what they're doing. I'm just like, do they really? I've just seen too many evidence of them actually not knowing what they're doing. Maybe they're stumbling into actually what they're supposed to be doing.
That's kind of where I'm at. I think they're kind of just failing in the right direction.
Yeah, maybe they're just, stumbling into, hey, this is exactly what we should be doing. I don't know if that's exactly what they're trying to do. When you pay Myles Garrett, how many $40 million a year, are you intending to lose every game paying a guy $40 million a year? I have no idea. Maybe they are. I don't know. That would be a question for them. But it seems like anytime Jimmy Haslam speaks, he's committed to winning. He's like, we're not tanking. We're going to be a good team. They're in a division where they got 3 competitive teams around them. So I went with a 6 just because, they're not really panicked. They're 0-2. They should be 0-2. They're almost 1-1. They kind of got fortunate that the kicker's not very good, or they would be 1-1 right now. But I just don't really know. They have a direction more than the Jets do, so it's not a 10. But ultimately, what are we doing in Cleveland? It's similar to the Tyrod thing where you're starting an older quarterback who's been around the block. He should probably be with Matt Ryan right now, calling games or whatever it is. It's just like, let's speed this thing up. Let's see what the young quarterbacks do, because we give them till Thanksgiving a year 2 is Colin Cowherd's infamous statement. Let's see what these young quarterbacks look like, and if neither of them are good, maybe you got to try the first round waters again, because both these guys are day 2 and 3 picks. So let's just see what they look like. There's areas of the team that look decent, and Stefanski, I like the coach, but this is a 3 or 4 win team. If they even stumble to 3 or 4 wins, so it's just like the season's over. So they got to panic a little bit if they were trying to win, which I'm not sure they are, but not as much as the Jets for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to articulate these two teams. It's kind of hard to get into any real in-depth analysis when, that's not who they are right now. Let's just be frank. They don't want in-depth analysis because all they're worried about is trying to move on to next season and maybe get a high draft pick. Draft pick one way or another, or somehow land a great free agent. I think at least the Browns, again, they have the building blocks in place. They have 2 rookie running backs. Fan, in my opinion, has been one of the stories of the first few weeks as far as, that guy could be really awesome.
He could be something, yeah.
And then, of course, you have Garrett, a blue chipper on defense, and you have some stuff on the roster. I just think the problem is, when is this going to come to fruition? And that's why I think it's a 2 right now, because I think this is a multi-year plan, and it's the early stages of it. But again, as you mentioned, the Browns are so incompetent that I could be changing my tune very quickly in the next few weeks if they somehow muster out a few wins. Then all of a sudden that first overall pick is
long gone,
long gone. But again, they do have Jacksonville's first rounder, right? So that's a big deal.
That's that's actually a good move by them. So maybe they'll actually
regardless of how Jacksonville does, even if Jacksonville wins the division, I think that is still a great move, because I think they really won that trade, as we've seen so far early in this season. I just think that the sum of the parts move really worked for them there. But a move that I don't think is working out right now is picking the Houston Texans to win the AFC South, which we both didn't really do. We talked about it anyway. I know I didn't. I've been on this for a few months here. I've been promoting my anti-Houston Texan propaganda from the rooftops. I mentioned multiple times, I didn't really know who else to pick, but I mentioned the bet to you off air.
The field.
I believe the field, it was plus money. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was plus money regardless. And I said, Mike, that is the best bet I've seen in a very long time. And a lot of people said, you are insane. Who are you picking of this 3? And I was like, hey, I kind of like all of them, but one of them will do the job. All I have to be right is on one of them.
I kind of hate all of them. but yeah, so I do agree.
And you could hate all of them, but again, so far, so good. Houston, 0-2. They lose a weird game against the Rams week 1 where it was competitive throughout, but I never really felt like they were going to win the game.
No.
And then in week 2 against a Tampa Bay team marred with injury without both of their tackles in a game that Houston should have won at home. You hang your hat on getting pressure against the quarterback. They were able to muster excuse me, up against enough pressure throughout that game. Again, because of the two tackles being out. And guess what happens? They absolutely vomit late. Baker storms down the field, wins the game nearly at the death. And we're looking at this Houston team like, okay, I bet they can beat these teams with terrible infrastructure, especially up front. But against any team that's half decent, if this offense is going to be this incapable of moving the ball throughout, how are they going to win games? Because I think what I've seen this week, especially again, we're always going to pick up the national media. With the national media is this defense is still a vaunted defense. D'Amico Ryans is too good of a coach. He's going to turn around. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But for as many Pittsburgh Steelers as we've seen, as many of the late stage New England Patriots have we seen, where maybe the offense isn't as like prolific as it once was, the defense can kind of push them to where they need to go, and then perhaps the offense can figure it out late. Houston's not really in position to be able to do that. The defense is good. I don't think it's elite. And CJ Stroud, man, like, talk about a guy falling off a cliff. Last year, we were mentioning fantasy football earlier. There were plenty of dynasty rankings that had him as the number one overall quarterback. This is easy to forget now with all that's happened in the last year and a half, but he was kind of this blue chip guy, whether it was fantasy or if you were drafting a hypothetical team from scratch. He was the 1-1 for a lot of people. And now, I don't know if I would take him within the first, 10 picks of a quarterback redraft. That's how dire it's getting for him. So, Mike, it's 10 for me for Houston because it's a 10, and here's why. Here's why. Even if they're able to kind of ride the pine and figure this out here, or even if they're able to go 9-8 and win the division, right? You went from a team that everyone thought was a surefire Super Bowl contender in the future with a quarterback that at least we'll call it 26 franchises would have instantly just like that swapped for that guy. And now you're unsure about the roster because of the way everything is going, especially on offense, as I've mentioned a few times here. Okay. The coaching on defense is fine, but the offensive coaching is really worrisome, especially with the play calling early in games.
It's bad.
This idea where they have to establish the run every game in the most vanilla way possible has really hindered their first few drives. And then
they can't run. They can't run the ball.
They can't run the ball at all. So Mike, that's the problem for me because now you have questions at quarterback. They're not severe yet by any means, but you went from at least thinking you have an elite guy to is he even above average at this point? You have a coaching infrastructure where you trust the head coach to an extent, but the offensive coaching has been abysmal. And then this roster, especially on offense, as I mentioned, between the front five, who have been awful, outside of Nico Collins, do you like any of the weapons on this team? Because I really don't.
No, I don't.
That's why it's a 10, because I think nothing is worse in sports than thinking you have something and then it evaporating for no really good reason. It's not like he had an injury. It's not like there was a coaching change out of nowhere. It's not like there was some big scandal. It just fell off a cliff, right? So to me, that's why it's a 10, because there's no clear path to prominence here for Houston. It's like, sure, they can reload. Maybe you can argue there are a few free agents from getting this thing back on track. But for me right now, looking at it from the outside looking in, I don't know what the next moves are because they just don't know what they have anymore.
I think that it's a 5 for me. I'm not panicked yet. My tune can change if they lose to Jacksonville. This is a sneaky must win on Sunday. If you fall to 0-3, that's a serious problem. But right now, through 2 weeks, I've seen them barely lose to the Rams, who I believe are good, and lose at the last second to the Bucks, who I believe are really good. So I'm not going to panic yet and say that they're not who I thought they were, because through 2 weeks, they're exactly who I thought they were. I still think that they can win the division because I think the division's wide open and to be won by anybody, including the team we're going to talk about next. So I'm not fully panicked on them just yet. I am panicked on Stroud. If this was a Stroud panic meter, it might be closer to a 10. But Texans overall, I think, are a 5. I think their defense is really good. I don't think it's just good. I think that it's really good. I think they face 2 good offenses And at the end of the game, you face Stafford, Baker. Those guys are really good. Unfortunately, that's just what it is. But I like their secondary a lot. I think Stingley's an awesome player. Lassiter, Petrie. And yeah, their front four can get after the quarterback. And they did get after the quarterback. It's not their fault that Stroud couldn't complete a forward pass for large stretches of that game and was trying to throw the ball to Levante David, threw the ball away on 4th and goal over guys' heads, missed Nico Collins in the end zone. The offensive line can't protect a soul. So for the offense, the panic meter's up. But I think this defense is still good enough to win them the division. They're not out of this division race by any stretch of the imagination. And all it takes is the Colts turning into a pumpkin, specifically Daniel Jones, and they're right back in this thing. They got a division game, I think, the next 2 weeks against Jacksonville and Houston. They can get right back in this thing because those teams aren't very competent. They face 2 good NFC squads. They still have yet to lose a conference game. So until they lose an AFC game, if they lose on Sunday in Jacksonville, I'm going to be very, very, very worried that this team is much worse than even I imagined. And we were fading them kind of. Like, we were soft fading. We're like backing away from our Texan stock. I still have Texan stock because I think that they just played 2 really good teams. But Stroud, I mean, it's not a sophomore slump anymore. This is like really bad stuff. I don't know what's going on with him.
I think my problem is these good teams were actually good matchups for Houston. The Rams' offensive line was a little banged up, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers line was without 2 starters. So and it's not like their interior is great either. So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, sure, these are great teams, but a few years ago, you would have wanted to split at least at the bare minimum. And to go 0-2 with one of those being at home and losing in such heartbreaking fashion, I think this thing could just compile really quickly and it could get out.
They probably should be 1-1. 2 games that came right down to the final minute. You lose both. They were driving against LA and they fumbled at the 20-yard line. And then Monday, I should say, they give that game away on the 4th and 10 scramble by Baker.
Yeah.
And lose with 5 seconds left. So they could easily be 1-1. They could easily be 2-0, and we would have a different conversation. But ultimately, you are who your record is, and they're 0-2 right now. It's not looking good, but I'm not fully panicked. I'm gonna give them a 5 for now because I've seen the 0-2 thing. I've seen teams right the ship at 0-2, 0-3, and you're looking at serious problems.
We'll move on with an AFC South foe of theirs, the Tennessee Titans.
Yes.
Who I was soft buying before the season. I mentioned on this very program that I thought they could be on the precipice of flirting with that 7th wildcard spot in the AFC, or at least like competing for this wonky division. And they're 0-2, and they put up a fight week 1 against Denver. They played 3
competitive
2.5, 3 solid quarters against the Rams, and then they kind of fell apart late. But for the Titans, I'm giving them a 1 because I still think in the first few weeks, this is kind of what I was thinking. I didn't think they'd win either of those games. So to me, they're exactly where they were supposed to be, 0-2. They played frisky enough, particularly in that first week against Denver. And then they showed some signs against the Rams. And then again, Matthew Stafford just kind of had an out-of-body experience and did what he does. And that's what happens sometimes, right? But I think what I've seen from Cam Ward early is that he's a gamer. I think he's immediately raising the floor of this team. And I mentioned the reason why I was buying into this Titans team was because last year they won a handful of games, and they should have won a few more, but because of the incompetence of particularly Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, I remember you too, pal. But regardless, it kind of cost this team from, just a bad team to a terrible team, right? And so now, if you think they went from a horrific quarterback to at least a good quarterback, a solid quarterback, to me, that's responsible for at least 3 or 4 more wins. Yeah. And I still have that thought process in my mind. I think this division is wide open. Obviously, you play 6 division games. If they can win 3 or 4 of those, they're in business. There's no reason why they can't split with the division. They can easily do that. And if they're able to muster out 1 more, then all of a sudden you have a winning record in your division, and on the season, you'd be 4-4 if you include the 2 games you just lost, right?
Yeah.
So I think Tennessee's in a fine position. Now, here's the problem. Are they a year away from being who I think they could be? That is a very clear possibility. Next year, they could be that frisky underdog team that overexceeds and makes a playoff push with a better Ward and, either sneaks into the playoffs or is at least like in the discussion. That's on the table. But right now, this team, in my opinion, has enough guys to be competitive. And look, Calvin Ridley's been terrible through 2 weeks. If he's just not a corpse, I think all of a sudden the receiving core looks a little more fruitful because I think Yelich Amon, or my guy who I talked about in our pilot episode, has balled out so far. He's been pretty good. Jig Conku still sucks. That's a problem. He can't catch either. But regardless, I think Tony Pollard's going to be playing a little better. I think Ridley will play a little bit better. I think the offensive line's been decent enough, at least, throughout the first 2 weeks. And then the defense has moments where they're pretty solid. They got torched at the end of last week, but again, I think some of that is pressure when your offense is failing to move the ball so many times.
Yeah.
They can eventually just break, and that's what happens in some of these games. So, yeah, again, I don't know what I said the first time my first figure was, but I'm going a 1 for the Titans. I am not worried about this team at all. They're exactly where I thought they'd be, and I think they have plenty of room to ascend throughout the rest of the season.
I'm going with a 1 as well. Not to compare them to this team, but they're on the exact same trajectory as last year's Denver Broncos. So yeah. Denver last year goes into a hostile environment with a rookie quarterback, and Bo Nix looks, a little overwhelmed in Seattle, and they lose that game feisty. They lose close. Cam Ward goes into a hostile environment as a rookie quarterback, and they lose close. Put up a decent fight. Then week 2 they come home, they lose to a good squad. Last year, Bo Nix lost to Pittsburgh in week 2, I believe. And then this past week, Cam Ward and the Titans lose to the Rams. Just overall, those teams just have better players. So they lose to 2 teams that they're not supposed to beat. So they're 0-2. That's totally fine. This division is still wide open. I think the Titans have been frisky enough to where I can still hedge my bets with them and say, yeah, they could if the Texans thing if they nosedive and go south, if Daniel Jones turns into a pumpkin, Jacksonville still has some issues in-house. Titans are still alive to make this thing. It's like I said, it's a wide open division. They absolutely could be. Maybe they're a year away. There's certainly a world where that is on the table. But right now they're 0-2, and I'm not panicked at all. They're facing a Colts team right now that everyone loves. They're 2-0. They're coming into Tennessee. It's very similar to last year when Denver was 0-2 and facing a red-hot 2-0 Bucs team, and no one gave Denver a chance that day. And Denver kind of walked in there and smoked the Bucs, and that was really what jumpstarted the Broncos last year, who had an 0-2 start. And then they win that game against Tampa. Then they win the game against the Jets in like murky weather. And it kind of catapults them into a pretty solid season. So the Titans are still fine, I think. No one expected them to be 1-1 after 2 games. So 0-2 is fine with it. I'm not panicked at all in Tennessee. You win your division games, and you're right in this thing. And right now they haven't played a division game yet, so we don't know. But I think Ward and the Titans are frisky now. He's going to get better as the year goes on. I've always said with Tennessee, with rookie quarterbacks, we just got to, it might be rocky early, but usually once they find their groove later in the season, after Halloween, closer to Thanksgiving, you'll start to see better quarterback play. They'll get a little bit more comfortable. The O-line will be a little bit better. I think the Titans are going to be just fine. Maybe they won't win the division as far as like just fine, but I think that they're an 0-2 team that should not be panicked because they're right on schedule to do what they want to do.
We're going to skip who we have next on the sheet. We're going to go to the Giants next.
I love that.
And look,
we agree on this one, right? I think we're going to agree on what. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go either way. You can say 1 because this thing's so south anyway. It doesn't even matter what record they finish in. They're such a dumpster fire.
That's fair.
What is there to be panicked about because you already knew this was going to happen? Or it's a 10 because obviously this is so terrible. Like, what is going on, right? Look, they actually found a spot on Sunday Ticket last week. Congratulations.
They did.
Russell Wilson turned back the clock.
It
looked like a college football Big 12 game.
It was an arcade. It was insane.
It was ridiculous. And guess what? They still lost. That's what the Giants do. And some people will come away from that performance like, wow, okay. This frisky Giants thing, it's not exactly how we thought. It's not the defense creating pressure and
not
Russell Wilson game managing his way to this. But, hey, if Russell Wilson could just be prime Peyton Manning every week, then maybe we can win 7 games and we can be something here. Newsflash, that's not going to happen, okay?
Are you facing Dallas every week? Are you facing Dallas secondary every week? I don't think so.
No, they're not facing this inept Dallas defense every week. I'm just so sick of this Giants team. And to think that, like, people before the season were really trying to convince others that this was a squad that was going to be able to compete week in and week out and be this frisky team. Congratulations, you were frisky against a division foe. Okay, awesome. Good for you. This team blows. This is a capital B blows team. This is the number 1 blows team in the league because they're not as bad as some of the teams we're going to get to in a second, or as the Jets or the Browns. They're not as bad as those teams. But it's this kind of self-entitlement that they have that they think they're not at least in the ballpark of those teams.
Those teams.
That's what drives me nuts about them. Because, look, they can pretend that Dable's an awesome coach. They can pretend that Shane's figured something out in the front office with some of these picks, okay? They can pretend that, because they have Neighbors and because they have Burns and because they have Carter and some of these names that you've heard of on Sundays watching, Red Zone, that they're in position to, they're only a few guys away. They should be more competitive. No, they shouldn't be, because this team stinks, okay? And I'm so sick of them stinking year in and year out and pretending that they don't. And every scapegoat that they've had has moved on and has done better since they've left. That's the other awesome thing about this, is that clearly it's an organizational failure. You are just the Browns with a New York apartment. That's all you are. Congratulations on the prime real estate. You are a dumpster fire that is nowhere close to being better. And I don't know when this thing turns around. I really don't. They're one of those teams.
Ooh.
Is it when they get Drew Aller? Is it when they get Lenore Sellers? What are they supposed to do? I don't know. It's a 10, obviously. You could zag and go 1 because
no,
we all knew this team was going to stink anyway. But it's a 10 because for some reason people in the building thought they wouldn't. So
you could do it 1. I'm not going to do that. This is an easy 10 for me. You basically echoed everything I said on that little mini rant there. I had on my notes, you couldn't even win the Russ 500-yard game. You couldn't even win that game. How many of those are we getting this year? Like on a how many Russell Wilson time Peyton Manning
just
games?
happened.
That just happened. Okay, so I can count on my hand the amount of games that Russell Wilson's going to have of those games this year, and you couldn't even win that one. And you're not facing Dallas in secondary every week, unfortunately. Now you get an angry Chiefs team at 0-2. This is an easy 10 for me. Like I said, I don't know how many times Russ is going to be able to turn back the hands of time like that. And the way the Giants are supposed to be frisky was their D-line. Remember their front four. Everyone you got Kayvon Thibodeau. You got, the kid from Penn State, Abdul Carter. You got, Dexter Lawrence. This is going to be a team that they can get home with 4, and they're going to make the games interesting. They're going to really frustrate quarterbacks. They're going to be in these games if they just get game manager Russ. That's all they need. No, they need to score 40 to beat Dallas. Absolutely. This is an easy 10. This is the easiest 10 I think we have. Now, again, you could say 1 because you think that you just knew they were going to suck anyways. That's fine. But they were trying to trick us into thinking they'd be frisky. There is nothing frisky about this team. Absolutely nothing. Credit to Russ. He was awesome prior to that pick in overtime, but you couldn't even win that game. You get Brandon Aubrey into, unfortunately you get hit with a 64-yard Brandon Aubrey field goal, but to let them get down there in one play. I mean, all Dak had to do was throw one play, one middle of the field shot to Jake Ferguson, and that was all Dallas. That was like, yeah, we don't need any more yards. So the Giants are just a meme at this point. We can sit here and meme them for 10 more minutes, but that would feel cruel. This is an easy 10.
We've spent like 4 minutes too long on this.
Yeah, 4 minutes too long. I'm already, the Giants, we're done. We're done with you guys.
We'll go to a quick one here. The Saints. It's a 1 because no one expected them to be good, and they're doing exactly what they were need to be doing. But
I'm going to defer to you on the Saints because I haven't watched a single Saints game, so I'm just going to defer to you. Whatever you have for the Saints, I
haven't missed anything. I've rewatched them. I didn't watch them live.
That's fine. I don't even know if I should panic because I haven't seen the games, so I actually don't know what's going on in New Orleans right now. Is our guy Rattler looking good? I have no idea. I don't know.
Better than I thought, which was, low bar, but
that's okay.
1. They're doing what they want to be doing. Here's a team that's not doing what they want to be doing: the Carolina Panthers.
Oh dear.
Who I went on a massive rant a few weeks ago about how insulting to my intelligence this Bryce Young facade was. That at the end of last year, he had a quarterback rating that I believe was 90 on the dot. It was around there anyway. Those last games after the suspicious Andy Dalton car accident.
Very suspicious.
All of a sudden, Bryce Young was an average quarterback, and everyone was over the moon about it. And I think part of the reason why was that last week against Atlanta, he lights it up.
Arizona. Last week against Atlanta last year, you're saying? Yes.
Mike, come on.
Of course. Week 18 last year against Atlanta.
Yes. Come on now. Week 18 last year against Atlanta.
Yes.
He goes crazy. And it really lifts up his stats throughout that entire stretch. And people were really honing in on that this summer. And what I was getting to was last week in Arizona and the week prior to that in Jacksonville. He was the same guy that we remember from the start of last year. It's the same thing. It happened again. And guess who's not surprised? This guy. Because I
You're not
told you
surprised
the
at all.
entire time that he went from being abysmal to maybe slightly above average. And because that is a large jump, people acted like he was on his way to becoming a great quarterback. Where I said, hold on a second. You forgot where he started from. And you're not really understanding where he is now. He's still hovering around average. He was the number 1 overall pick. His roster's still bad. How do you think that hovering around average from a former number 1 overall pick with a bad roster is going to work out well? That's kind of what I said a few weeks ago. And lo and behold, here we are. And I think part of last year, and look, the numbers don't totally back this up because the efficiency was kind of up and down. But I thought last year they were really great at pounding the rock, okay? And Chuba Hubbard relieved some pressure from Bryce Young. They had some turnover luck in those games and some time of possession stuff that went their way. So compile all that together, and I think Young had a decent enough stretch. But I said that wouldn't really continue because there's no evidence supporting that it would continue because it was in meaningless games against bad teams. And sure enough, Jacksonville's trying to change their culture around, and we'll see how that goes. Again, as you mentioned, Sunday, big game to see where they're at as a franchise, right? And then Arizona, who is at least good against the bad teams, I would say, the last few years. We don't think they're good.
I think they blow.
I kind of do too, but they've at least kind of beat up on these, middling bad teams.
The Panthers, yes, they did beat the Saints both by 1 score. Yes, they beat the Saints.
Exactly. So for me, it's a 10 panic meter in Carolina because these goofballs down there thought that somehow, some way, their problems were alleviated based off a rather small half-season sample size, which was compiled by a lot of games against bad teams. I think it was a facade from the beginning. I thought it was fake. I don't think they have any way to progress further besides benching this guy and getting a new quarterback. I think that's exactly what you have to do. I think Bryce Young, he'll still have some detractors, but he'll also have some people defending him after last week because if you look at his raw box score, the numbers were fine.
Weren't that
like
bad.
55 times.
Right.
And to me, it's so clear. Like, we're just delaying the inevitable. We're circling the drain at this point. It's over. It's done. It's been done. It's just further done. And I respect giving him an extra opportunity at the end of last year. I respect hyping him up because you want him to have that confidence. But at the end of the day, he's a short quarterback that doesn't have a big arm and isn't athletic. It isn't that accurate. So what is he? He's going to be benched is what he's going to be, Mike.
Probably.
That's why it's a 10.
We're trending that. This is a surprising 10 for me. I didn't think I'd be here 2 weeks in. You're not surprised at all. It seems like you knew exactly how it's going to be. I thought, that they got a scheduling break. They got the Jags, the Cardinals, and the Falcons to start the year. I said, okay, this is it for Bryce Young. He got 3 not very daunting teams. Jacksonville's defense was a joke last year. Arizona, we like their pieces a little bit, I guess. Jonathan Gannon's a solid defensive coach. And then Atlanta, we said, what is their pass rush going to be if there is any pass rush? Well, we learned Sunday night. I guess they have a pass rush now. But heading into the year, I figured out Carolina's got 3 games here. They can prop up Bryce Young. He can finish he can continue on how he finished the end of last year. Boy, was I wrong. They haven't led for a second this season. They played Jacksonville and Arizona, not world-beating teams, and they have not led for a single second against either team. So this is an easy panic 10. This is if you're a Panthers fan, you did not expect to have this start to the season 0-2 and not leading for a single second against these 2 teams heading into your first divisional game against Atlanta, who Atlanta looks frisky. Atlanta could easily beat Tampa if Koo makes the field goal. And then Sunday night against the Vikings, Atlanta has a pass rush, I guess, maybe.
They thoroughly outplayed.
The Vikings, who have better players, I think, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, Carolina, this is where do you go from here? I'm almost Panthers out because I've seen so much Panther stuff on social media now where it's like, here's who to blame, and then it's like now, oh no, this person's to blame, and it's just like nothing's working there. You could say it all points back to the quarterback. I wouldn't necessarily push back on that idea. But man,
it doesn't help.
It certainly doesn't help, and you got to take advantage of these teams you're going against. Prior to what I like to call garbage time, they didn't move the ball at all against Jacksonville. I know there was a rain delay in that game. They didn't move the ball at all. They didn't score a touchdown until like a minute and a half in the game. Against Arizona, that whole fourth quarter was them down 20 and then just like kind of,
it was fluky. It was so fluky.
The way they got back in the game. I mean, first of all, guess who scored all their touchdowns this year? If you guessed Hunter Renfrow off of 2 years away from football, you would be correct. That is not how any Panthers fan envisioned this going. They were hyping up their receiving core heading into the year. They got Ted McMillan. They got the kid they dropped, Jimmy Horn. They had Adam Thielen. They gave him away. But they had Leggett. Everyone was like, year 2 Leggett. Year 2 Xaiver Leggett. They're pushing back on that take for sure. Carolina, everything that Panthers fans thought about heading into the season, that their offense was going to progress forward, and could they just be not the worst defense in NFL history? Right now, the offense can't do anything. So this is not at all how Panthers fans envisioned it. Seems like you envisioned this exactly happening, but Carolina, this is for them easy panic 10. There's nowhere. You couldn't be panicking less than this. This is like insane.
Mike, next podcast, I'm gonna have an end table like right over here. Right over here. It's going to have flowers with the Panthers logo on it because I want mine after calling this multiple times between my day job, writing, and this. I've said it so many times, and I was like, if they end up being decent this year, I'm never going to hear the end of it. But guess what? I was right.
They're bad.
I thought I was going to be right the whole time. That's why I kept saying it.
They're really bad.
And look, Mike, here's one where we both got wrong. And
don't
I hope
don't do this.
I hope it turns around. Because I think the league is better when this team is better. And man, do I think this would be really entertaining if they ever figure it out. But the Chicago Bears have been, forget disappointing, unwatchable at times. It's almost depressing at times. And
it's depressing.
By no means am I a Bears fan. And I know you're a big Caleb Williams supporter, and I am to an extent, not as much as you, but regardless, I still look. I like good quarterbacks, okay, and I was fortunate enough to watch him at the University of Oregon when he was at USC, and I was able to be fairly close to the guy and see his magic up close. And look, I left that game having the same concerns I have with him now, and that's the problem. That was 2 years ago. And here we are, and I still have the same concerns. I thought he held the ball way too long. I thought he thought his athleticism was better than it was, and that was particularly an issue with impending pass rush when they would muddy the pocket. And I thought in college he got away with it a little bit because it just happens in college. You kind of can just deke out defenders in college way easier than you can in the NFL. I thought he would routinely hunt a big play when he'd have a check down wide open 5 feet away from him with no one in the vicinity of set check down, and they could have easily pushed the ball more, and he just refused to do so. And I thought he too often put the ball in harm's way when he didn't have to. And all of those concerns have been echoed throughout the first 2 weeks for the Bears. They utterly collapse on Monday Night Football in front of a national audience against the division foe in the Minnesota Vikings. And then the following week, they go to Detroit against the team that absolutely blew the first week of the season against Green Bay. And they looked like the Detroit of old. It was a track meet that Chicago ran in basketball shoes, apparently. They weren't expecting to be there.
By the way, you mentioned Detroit. What's going on with their offense? Well, now they're averaging 33 points a game again. Just because of 1 week, they're back to the Detroit offense is back. They're averaging 33 points a game. This Bears, it's rough. What's going on in Chicago?
Yeah, the Bears look like a get right team on the schedule right now. If you're struggling, especially on offense, you want to see Chicago because you need that get right game, and that's where they're at. So for me, look, it's a 7, and it's so easy. It's so easy to do the 10 thing with them. It's so easy. We're not doing easy here. We're doing the correct way to analyze this. Because, look, it's still the third week of this regime with Ben Johnson. It's still only the beginning of the second season for Caleb Williams. And even though those problems that I mentioned before are still persistent, and that is a glaring red flag, it could turn around just like that. In a few weeks, Caleb could really start to understand the system. The light bulb could go off. I think his problems are somewhat fixable.
Yeah, they are.
Some of them, at least some of the more prominent ones. the holding the ball thing, the not being able to understand how to get the ball away from pressure thing. I think those are fixable. Just the taking what the defense gives you, that should be fixable. So it's a 7 for me. The defense, especially on the back end, is a real concern. I think the pass rush that was promised to us is gone by the wayside.
Where is it? Yeah.
Well, I don't remember seeing it. And then as far as this revolutionary offense, I actually like some of the stuff they're running. I really do. And that's kind of why it's a 7, because it's still Ben Johnson. There's still some fun stuff in the offense, but if they can't get anything out of Swift, and Caleb still is shaky in the next few weeks, even if he's a little bit better, if you have a bad defense, if you have a bad run game, and your quarterback's inconsistent, what are you? So to me, it's a harsh 7 that could easily be compiled the next few weeks, and that could easily shoot up to a 10 if it looks this bad. But I still want to see it at least for another 2 weeks. If they're sitting at 0-4, we're gonna have to have an emergency podcast and talk about it. But I still just want to see it a few more weeks. So it's a 7. It's a 7.
I'm pushing 8 here. I don't want to do this. I almost have to say I'm panicked to the point where, I might have to give it an 8 just because, and it's not even a Caleb issue to me. I mean, you spent time talking about Caleb there. I was promised a competitive defense this year, and now it's this is not even this is junior varsity. For Jalen Johnson's now out for the year. That was their top corner. So Tyreek Stevenson, let's see what we got here. This is really maybe I'm more panicked because I actually had the Bears. As a competitive team this year. I thought they'd win 8 or 9 games. I'm not saying they can't win 8 or 9 games, but I took a peek at their schedule before we hopped on here, and they're not winning 8 or 9 games.
It's brutal, man.
It's really tough, and I don't think they're that good. Is my point? Is my overall my overall reason for panicking is I don't think they're as good as I thought they were. It's not even that Caleb, is taking some time, and I think the stuff they're running down there, specifically in the red zone, is like they're running good stuff. Maybe the Bears are just cursed because, and yeah, Caleb is always hunting the big play. But when you give up 52 points, don't you have to always hunt the big play? I mean, when you're consistently chasing points, you're like, hey, my defense is giving up 52 points to Jared Goff and the Lions, who coming off a game where the Lions didn't score a touchdown for the first 59 minutes of regulation. This is really, really, it's not a 10, even though you usually could say it's a 10, because it's only 2 weeks, and you got Dallas this week, so you're going to probably ho-hum offensively, move the ball again. And they have been moving the ball for the most part. They've been good. They've been good in the red zone. They score touchdowns in the red zone. That's what you want to see. I still like, we both like Ben Johnson. So I'm not going to sell on my stock 2 weeks into September. But overall, this season, I thought Chicago would be good. And I no longer think that they're that good. They may still be able to, we'll see a progressive year 2 Caleb, year 2 Roma Dunze. These guys may look like a functioning team. I don't put that past them. But overall, I expected a better roster. I thought they improved the roster a lot. And through 2 weeks, I think the roster is not that good. And I thought it was 2 weeks ago. So I'm panicked, and I don't want to be, but I almost have to be.
Mike, there's one team left. And if you're a new viewer, you would say, okay, I know who this team is. They're going to spend a lot of time on this team. It's not going to happen. Because, A, I have Chiefs fatigue, okay? Severe Chiefs fatigue. They are the talk of every show around the country since falling 0-2, as if we couldn't at least foresee that happening. Like, they act like it's the most shocking thing that's ever happened. Look, if I knew Justin Herbert was going to be allowed to throw like 40 times a game, yeah, I might have predicted this to happen.
They played 2 good teams.
They play two good teams. This team lacks talent in key areas.
Yeah.
They also are without good talent in key
They're without
areas.
some of the talent, right.
Clearly, there's something going wrong upstairs. Travis Kelce not only wears a free 4 shirt before the game, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen anyone do. He also drops a slant at the goal line, and it's picked, and that effectively loses them the game. So if you just compile all this together, you get a team that is a dynasty that is not on the brink of collapse, but man, it is not looking great right now. And for that, I will give them a 6 because it is still Mahomes. It is still Andy Reid. It is still Spags. I think the defense has played okay. I don't think they've been great. I think they've been okay. They've been decent. The offense looks bad, sure. Obviously, they look bad. They're without 2 starting receivers. What did you expect to happen?
What
Like
exactly?
Mahomes can be Mahomes, but if I'm running routes, what does it matter? So that's why it's a 6. Because is this team as good as they once were? No. Is Mahomes as good as he once was? Definitively, no. He's not. I don't think he is. Can he turn it on a little bit when the playoffs come on, like he did last year? Sure, but he's clearly not as good as he's been in recent iterations. That is evident at this point. But it's still a 6 because if this compounds and they, are like a wild card team, right? And they don't reach their floor, which has been the AFC Championship game. There's going to be doubts, right? And Kelsey could be on the brink of retirement here in the next few years, and that's a problem. Even if he has been, treading his tires the last few years, he's still an integral part to that offense. So there's going to be turnover, and New England was able to kind of have this 20-year dynasty where they were able to extend their window multiple times and make key decisions at key times. To think Kansas City can magically do that, I think is very naive. Can they do it? Sure. Of course they can. But it's not that easy. And there's a reason there's only been 1 2-decade dynasty in the NFL. At some point, these things usually crumble. They don't necessarily collapse quickly. It's a slow erosion over time. And all the signs are pointing to that erosion, but you want to give them the benefit of the doubt because of their history. So therefore, it is a 6. It is a boring 6. I just want to see more. It sounds ridiculous. I don't care. I don't care. We've seen this team so many times just flip the switch at the right time and figure it out. Can they do it again? Sure, obviously. They can do it again. It just sounds so ridiculous when you say it over and over again because no matter what we say now, it doesn't matter until January with this specific team.
Yes.
Some of these other teams we can project in a different manner.
They'll be out by Thanksgiving, yes.
Right. With the Chiefs, it's a different story. So it's a 6. Can it be higher? Sure. But look, it's a 6. That's
to me. I was gonna say. Usually I would go
higher.
No. I was gonna say 1. Normally I would say 1 because I've seen the Chiefs start out this way before. 2021 season after their Super Bowl loss to Tampa Bay. Yep. They started out very poorly. They were like randomly losing September games. I believe they lost that Baltimore game. Then they got smoked by Tennessee. They were like 1-2 or 2-3. And they ended up getting the number 2 seed, I believe, that year. That was when Tennessee had the number 1 seed. So I've seen this before, this Chiefs. I have to just default. I'm going to go 3 on the panic meter because I just trust Andy Reid. I trust Spags. I trust Mahomes. And they don't have all the weapons right now. And this is right now, through 2 weeks, exactly who I thought they'd be. I know they won 15 games last year. On my over-under video, I said I think they're closer to 11-6 win team, 11-6 type of team, because they won all their one-score games last year. Well, right now, guess what? They're 0-2 in one-score games this year. They won them all last year. Didn't lose a single one-score game last year. I was like, that's going to even out. They played 2 good teams. They lost both by a field goal and by 6. That's fine. You're going to eventually lose one-score games. They feel like an 11-6 win team, 11-6 team to me. And that's fine. Maybe that's a wild card team this year. Maybe they still win the AFC West. But right now, I'm inclined to trust them in December and January. I'm not inclined to make rash, overreactions in September because I've seen the Chiefs right the ship before. And right now, I mean, Spags is going to get the defense figured out right now. Right now, he's just kind of like, all right, well. And last week is tough because you go up against a team that just tush pushes they just tush push you to death. So it is what it is. They played the Eagles game. They played the Eagles, but also the Eagles are a better football team than them. They lose by 3 to a team that's inarguably better than them. They have better players. Yeah. You don't like to see Mahomes be the leading rusher for Kansas City 2 weeks in a row. That's obviously not a strong suit if you want to run the football well. But I'm not going to spend too much time with the Chiefs. I'm not worried yet. If they lose to the Giants on Sunday Night Football and go to 0-3, which I can't envision ever happening, then there's some concern in for sure. But right now, I'm not concerned. I have too much evidence to trust Andy Reid and that coaching staff. And once they get their guys back healthy, they should be fine.
Yeah, I have some other thoughts on them, but I'm so sick of it. Like we'll just wait.
Fatigue. We're fatigued. The Chiefs are fatigued out.
Yeah, we're gonna do something which I came up with, which I think is fun. It won't be too long, but I think it'll be a good exercise because we're gonna come back to this in a few weeks.
Yes,
maybe like week 6. We'll come back to it in about a month. We can't stand about the NFL season, Mike.
Yeah.
What we can't stand
There's two of them on here that I really want to hit on. There's two of them on here that I'm like, this. I think you did a good job on these. Two of these things I absolutely cannot stand.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where, look, it's early. You don't want to be that person where you just get a menu and you're like, this is terrible. You haven't even tasted the food yet. You're just saying it's terrible because the options given to you. And then you're like, okay, this turned out to be okay.
Right.
I'm going to kick us off here. No pun intended, because that's where I'm going. This kicking zone nonsense is so Bush League. Did the person who came up with this listen to their 12-year-old son playing Madden who said, hey, Dad, probably. I have this awesome idea. Imagine if just we had all these kickoff returns. Because I know you said like 5 years ago that these were super dangerous, okay? But what if by decreasing the distance of where each team starts, we make this just a little more entertaining? We make these returns more frequent. And not only do we make them more frequent, if you dare not like our system, if you dare kick it out of the back of the end zone, you get to start at the 35-yard line because how mean are you that you prevented us from this awesome visual experience of a kickoff return that looks like it's straight out of a stupid video game? How dare you? So you get to start at the 35-yard line. So you get to inflate all the stats that you've ever wanted to inflate. And now all of a sudden, 2025 can be the year of the points, because if you don't start at the 25 after you get creamed on kickoff return that you just told us was this super dangerous thing, you start at the 35 and you get to be 2 passes away from field goal range. Isn't that awesome? And to that I say, no, it freaking blows. It's awful. It's stupid. It reminds me of like a movie or something, like some idiotic thing that a movie wouldn't understand that they put in to try to like cater to a casual audience. It is the drizzling you-know-whats. I can't stand it. I can't explain it to people. Mike, I've been asked about this like 5 times already. People have texted me about it. I watched the game at a friend's house recently. His mom was in the room. She asked me about it. And I answer every time because I'm a nice guy. But do I hate it? Not the explaining part, but the fact that I have to explain it because it's so idiotic. You bet I do. Like, this is going to be one of those things where, like, the generation over 65, this is their last straw. They don't know what's going on anymore. They're done. They're putting in the towel.
They're like, what is it?
You've gone a bridge too far. You've messed up the kickoff returns. Like,
am I watching CFL? Much. They have no idea what they're watching at this point.
Mike, you have to hate this, right? You're a purist. You have to hate this.
I hate it. I'm a purist. I've mentioned it in a few group chats, few threads. I'm like, I can't stand this at all. You said 2 throws away from field goal range. How about 1 throw away from field goal range? That's pretty much, yeah. Line. If you get 15 yards, you're at midfield. You're thinking field goal already. It's so ridiculous. It's not even like a drive anymore. You're not even putting together a drive. You're starting out essentially, a play away from trotting your field goal kicking. It's just not. It's not good aesthetically. Purist or not, this is not a play that, again, I actually enjoy touchbacks. I mean, maybe that's unfair of me because I just don't care about, like, what is this whole nostalgia part of we want to bring back kickoff returns? Who cares? Eventually you're going to, like, if some of these guys can't even boot it out of the back of the end zone anyways. I mean, look at Chicago's kicker in week 1. He couldn't even kick it out of the end zone. He didn't have the leg for it. Most of these guys with their legs now can. But I just don't really, there's not this mystique over kickoff returns. I don't need to see it. It's also like every single return is coming out near the 40-yard line, it feels like. So even if you return one, you're flirting with them starting at the 35, 40-yard line anyways. So it's just, I don't like it. It's not one of the two that I absolutely could not stand on this list. This, honestly, as much as I hate it, it pales in comparison to the tush push for me. I'm so unbelievably over this play. Thank you, Tom Brady. The powers that be up in the broadcast booth are finally pointing this out. How many times the Eagles are twisting the rules, if you will, with this play. I mean, they are.
No, Mike, they're breaking the rules. They're not twisting the rules. They're breaking the rules.
It's a politician answer for me. But yes, you are absolutely correct. They are breaking the rules with this play. When he points it out 3 times, like, I just saw the entire line move early before the ball was snapped. It's like, yeah, this is ridiculous. And they're not even, it's a neutral zone infraction. They are across the line. It's It's a ridiculous play. I'm so bored of watching it. It's not, talk about aesthetically pleasing to watch. This is a rugby play. This is 3rd and 1. You know what's going to happen. 3rd and goal to 2. You know what's going to happen because they have 2 plays to run it. I've seen enough of this play. What are we on, year 4 now of this? I'm so unbelievably over this. Thankfully, it's probably the last year we're going to have to see it, but it just ruins games. The Eagles offense has lost any sort of explosive play because they just lean into this play. They're like, okay, we're going to get 4 yards this play, 3 yards that play, and then, okay, guess what? We set up our tush pushes for third down. It's so pathetic. I've seen enough of it. It's not blatant cheating, but they are breaking the rules of how this play is supposed to be officiated.
It's kind of blatant to me. I'm just going to go scorched earth on this real fast because I can't stand the crowd that's like, it's just boring because it's effective, okay? If that was true, I wouldn't have a problem with it because, as I mentioned, I'm a purist. If you truly have this unbreakable play, let's say sail worked every single time. You just run sail every single play, and it worked every time, and no one could stop it. Fine. Figure out how to stop it. That's what I would say, okay? But the problem is you can't stop it because they can't run it legally. It's impossible to run legally.
They're running it illegally.
They false start every time. They're lined up in the neutral zone every time. Someone is moving every time. It's not even just the linemen that are false starting. It's sometimes like Saquon or one of those guys pushing behind.
Before the ball snapped. Yes, of course.
Yes, they're also getting away with that. So every facet of this is either illegal, boring, or unjust. And most of the time, it's all three. Because that's what the play is. It's a disgrace from a visual standpoint, an actual rule standpoint, and the fact that it passed this offseason, because I don't think they articulated it well to these owners that apparently just don't watch football games. They're like, well, if they can't stop it, that's that's their prerogative, and we think they shouldn't be allowed to do it. Because,
how about officiate the play properly? We have refs making how much money?
But Mike, that's the problem. You can't officiate it properly. I remember Steratore said this recently. You can't officiate it properly. If you can't officiate it properly, then maybe it shouldn't be in the game.
Dean Blandino said it yesterday. He went on the Rich Eisen show. Said, "I'm so over this play because I had Brady and Burkhardt in the booth looking over me and saying, what's the ruling here?" He's like, I don't know. I don't even know how to officiate it. I don't know how they can officiate it, which means let's just get rid of it.
But it's Mike, so here's my thing. Call a false start every time. Because you can. You can do that. You can. I think like it is impossible to officiate. I 100% agree.
They run it so fast. They line up so fast and snap it. It's I am going to say it's very, very difficult to officiate.
Yes. I would just start calling. I think you're going to see it now. I'm not kidding. I think you're going to see some phantom false starts. Even at times, it might not be as blatant as it was on Sunday. You're going to see it at least once in a while. And then eventually, this offseason, I think it's gone. Minus 40,000 to get banned. Like, there's no doubt that vote is passing this time around. Mike, you mentioned a second one on here that you really liked. I'm curious what you had.
Can we just spend, not too much, can we spend time on the Frisky Raiders, please? I had, as an East Coast watcher, I had to stay up and watch the Raiders on a 10 p.m. kickoff, I believe.
Mike, I just want to tell the viewers, I wanted us to do a podcast on Monday because Sunday I was a little busy, so I'm like, Mike, we're going to push our podcast back to Monday, okay? By the end of that game, I didn't even remember to text you because I was so exhausted.
I was exhausted
watching the Monday Night Football game, particularly because of how awful the Raiders are, and I had to watch them 2 weeks in a row against perceivably my teams. I'm obviously a Patriots fan. I went to the University of Oregon, so Herbert has a special place in my heart. So I had rooting interest in both of their games so far.
So you had to watch the Raiders for 6 hours.
I hated it the entire 120 minutes. Awful. Keep going.
Terrible. You thought Geno Smith was going to survive this episode? Nope. We're going to talk about him. What an awful watch that was. I was told the Raiders were going to be a frisky, watch out, second place, third place team in the AFC West. What was that on Monday Night Football? I mean, oh my God. Did Geno Smith throw how many times? And how many of those throws where I was like, what is he doing exactly? Again,
it's smart to throw an interception if you throw it near the end zone.
Yeah.
Right? Did you know that? It's really smart. Forget about if it actually lands in the end zone, and if the defender's smart enough to just kneel it, then it's at the 20, and you're like, okay, then you didn't really do anything there. But hey, it's really smart. If you just throw it up as high as you possibly can, despite the fact that you kind of really need points, hey, hey, you might have an extra play. That doesn't matter because it's an arm punt. So It's all good.
Yeah, it's an arm exactly. So I think we both kind of like the Raiders skill guys to a degree. I mean, we like
To an
Brock
extent,
Bowers.
yeah, I guess.
Extent. Of course, we like Brock Bowers. That was their first round pick of a year ago. Then we like Ashton Genty, their first round pick of this year. Get the ball to those guys more. But can you explain this Geno Smith thing to me? I don't understand it. I've never gotten it.
I'm gonna try my best.
Can you? What does people see with Geno Smith that I'm not? Am I missing something?
So I've watched this tape. I'm an NFL Premium Plus subscriber. I just got it back. I had it last year.
Okay.
I just got it back. I'm going to be watching the tape every week. I think it's a good exercise. I have the free time at points to do it where I can at least watch some tape of some of these games and figure out what the hipster nerds are talking about.
Please.
Geno, particularly the last 2 years, is an incredibly accurate quarterback. Okay? He didn't really make inaccurate throws as far as like all his throws were near a receiver. He did that at an incredibly high clip. I believe 2 years ago, it was an absurd clip. It was like 85% of his throws or something. It was really high regardless, okay? So, in theory, their offensive line wasn't great. Kenneth Walker is a great running back, but he's never healthy, so therefore their running game was kind of inconsistent. So if you looked at it in a nutshell, there's this guy, he throws incredibly accurate passes. He's behind a shaky offensive line, to say the least, and his running game is very inconsistent. And the weapons, DK Metcalf is a feast or famine guy, and JSN wasn't really what he looks like now, which is like Amon-Ra St. Brown light, okay? So if you compile all those things together, I think where those people were coming from was, okay, you have this guy who's maximizing his production from his system because of what is around him, okay? He is incredibly accurate, so therefore, it's like baseball, productive outs. He's putting the ball in play. He's not allowing these throwaways. He's at least gaining yards on these throws. He's at least checking it down when he can. He's at least giving his wide receivers a chance, right? So I think it was one of those situations where they were misunderstanding the fact that because Geno was efficient and because he is accurate to an extent when he wants to be, even though we'll get to that in a second, that he was being held back in Seattle, and therefore, if you had him at around the 18th best quarterback in the league, because of that, all of a sudden, in a better system, with a better offensive line, with a more consistent wide receiver one, and again, you have to remember, JSN was not what he was now.
Sure.
And a more consistent running game, that all of a sudden, that 17th, 18th conventional quarterback in the league on tape, all of a sudden, if you put him in a new situation, that's a top 10 guy. And in theory, I kind of understand what they're saying, but here's the problem with all of that. Here's the problem. It's Geno Smith. And I have eyes too, man. I have eyes. And these advanced analytics, those are great. Okay.
Those are nice.
And I understand that, but I have eyes. And I see that he's a game manager. He really is. And at points, he was maybe a little bit better than that. Maybe a smidge better than that. And there were weeks where he looked really awesome. No arguments here. There are also weeks where he looked really pedestrian.
Pathetic.
And for some reason,
he looked really bad.
The latter of those two ends of the spectrum just magically evaporated. And those are chalked up to, well, the team's not really putting him in an advantageous position. That, in my opinion, is called gross overvaluation. I understand to an extent where those people are coming from. The ringer. I understand where they were coming from.
Exactly.
But it's just misunderstanding the situation. Because sometimes this really is just as simple as we make it out to be. You're either elite, great, good, could be better with a better team, or you kind of just blow.
Or you just are who you are at this point.
Or you just are who you are. And you can fall in one of those categories, but you're not really fluid as far as like a guy like Drake May, who in week one was just missing wide open throws left and right. Week two, he looked like prime Joe Montana. Right? Exactly. Okay, that happens with young quarterbacks. Geno Smith, granted, young in terms as far as like he didn't play for a while, so the arm's younger than it actually looks.
Yes.
But again, he's the average area. You can put him just a hair above average. You can put him a hair above below average. You can put him average. He's around there. That's exactly who he is. And Mike, this team is probably worse than the Seattle teams he was just on because Genty hasn't been able to get going. The offensive line, particularly run blocking, has been atrocious. It's not all been on Genty at all.
No,
Even though I think Genty hasn't necessarily got going himself either yet. And then the weapons, Jacoby Myers fun, Dante Thornton's a rookie. They just don't have enough. Trey Tucker is like a gimmick. We know that. So it's this thing where it's like, okay, if you thought he'd be better in a better situation, then why did you rank him higher when he went to a worse situation? How does that make any sense? I think that was lost on people. So, Mike, that is my explanation. I think the Geno thing would have been way more interesting. Where this is just a hypothetical. Let's say Baker was out for a year. He was, for whatever reason, he's out. Injury, life, whatever happens, he's out for a year. And Tampa brought in Geno Smith. With that kind of roster around him, with when they're healthy, Evans and Godwin and Abuka and McMillan and Tez and Bucky in the backfield and Shad, and when Wirfs is healthy, a solid enough offensive line. If he was in that situation from where he was with Seattle, okay, you have my attention. I can see, we can see if what your hypotheticals
in that division specifically.
Yeah, that division, you as in the people that are into Geno, I could see what they were thinking there. But here, there's just no possible way. It's just not there. It's grasping at straws. And Pete Carroll, I understand if this was 10 years ago, you could sell me on the Pete Carroll frisky team thing. He's 74 years old. Mike, my grandma's 70 years old, okay? She's 70. So 4 years younger than Pete Carroll. I don't trust her to do a lot of things. I love her very dearly, and I trust her to bring me milk on the way home. If I need a gallon of milk, Graham, can you pick that up on your way home? Okay, sure, honey. I trust her to do basic things like call me. Okay,
sure.
I do not trust her to set a defensive scheme or anything of that.
Anything too crazy. No.
Yeah, that brain power. Okay, that's just too much. And you could say he's chipper for a 74-year-old. Sure. Okay, sure. Have you ever been to a retirement community? Some of those people are really chipper.
He took a year off
all day.
Well, he took a year off to be a professor. So
yeah, he taught at USC. That's pretty cool. You're around the youth, Mike. You're around the youth. You get that young gene.
He's spry.
Okay,
he's spry. Yeah.
People think this is ageism. It's not. It's just the reality of the situation where he's just old at this point. He doesn't have the wherewithal he did 5, 10, 15 years ago to magically wave his wand and bestow upon the creed of Carroll on this team. It's just not going to happen. And look, Mike, they could win 6 games, okay? They could win 6, 7 games. They could eke out. Their schedule's not that bad.
They have
the division's really good.
Like. Yeah,
the division's really good. But again, with those divisional games, you can always win like 2 of them, right? Even if you're a bad team, you can always win like 2 of them. All of a sudden, they're at 3 wins. They just need to win 3 the rest of the schedule, okay? But this team doesn't have it. It's so obvious. Even in week 1, they won that game. They won it kind of handily. It was so obvious that A, May played terrible, and B, the linebackers on New England paired with the safeties behind them were so incapable of doing the bare minimum that
Splain's
any
really
team was going to beat them week 1. Oh, Splain's been terrible, but bad situation. But regardless, so yeah, I'm so sick of this.
We're exhausted on the Raiders. I've seen enough Geno red zone interceptions for my liking. They'll find a way on the quad box because but again, to your point, the Pete Carroll and Geno Smith thing, it was cute. It was fun in Seattle for a year and a half, 2 years. It was nice. It was fun. Maybe it seems like ageism, but I don't need to see this frisky Raiders team. Yeah, I'm out on this. I don't need to. That game took years off my life. I said after that game, I was like, I'm not getting those 3 hours back. It's 1 a.m. here on the East Coast. I just watched the Raiders for 3 hours, literally be inept. They actually force a fumble. It's like, oh, they have a chance. They give it right away. I can't watch much more of this Raiders team without losing my
mind. We're going to save the rest of these because I think some of the rest of these can be reused in coming weeks here. They can be topics for us going forward. We can do like a what we hated about week 3 segment. And some of these are really fun. Like, what do we think of A.J. Brown? That'll be interesting.
That'll be progressive.
Talk about. Yeah. We've talked about Tampa a lot, but man, are they not getting the respect that they deserve? But regardless, we're going to be back again 2 times a week from here on out. Pinky promise to our fans out there. We're going to do some Big Brother stuff. So if you're into Big Brother, make sure you check that out following this episode. I'm Mike.
No, you're not Mike.
I'm X. That's Mike. This is the Gurus. This was awesome. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
Awesome. So you're